National Guardsman Jack Teixeira was arrested last week for allegedly leaking more than 100 classified documents online that included classified information about the war in Ukraine and American allies. National security correspondent Sasha Ingber with Scripps News has been reporting on all of this and joins me now. Sasha, thank you for joining me.
Good to be with you.
We know that Jack Teixeira is a 21-year-old Air National Guardsman, which is a fairly low rank. How did he come in contact with these documents, and what do we know about why he leaked them?
Well, it seems that in 2019, Teixeira was transcribing whole paragraphs of these classified documents while he was at work. He apparently had a top secret clearance, which also gave him access to sensitive compartmented documents. And when he felt that it was possible he would be caught, he started printing these documents out and then bringing them home where he then photographed them. And we have seen the photographs of these classified documents, which appear to be creased. That is what the FBI has said in its affidavit. I spoke with Eric Toller. He is a partner at Bellingcat, the research organization. And he told me that Teixeira first shared these classified documents in a small channel called Bear versus Pig. Bear, a reference to Russia, Pig, a derogatory reference to Ukraine, shared some 300 classified documents. And this was in a primarily gaming community made up mostly of teenagers. And they didn't believe that these documents were authentic. One of them shared some documents in a different channel, and then it spread to Telegram, to 4chan, and ultimately to Twitter as well.
So we know that these documents were leaked on a myriad of places, as you mentioned, and one of the places of origin was Discord, which is primarily for gamers. And it took a while for the FBI to find these documents on Discord. How long did that take, and why did it take the amount of time that it did?
Well, it appears that the New York Times found this first, and then that triggered the search for a leaker. The reason that a 21-year-old airman has access to so much information, well, that is based on his level of security clearance. He apparently had a top secret clearance, and it's complicated because the government is trying to give as much access as possible to people to be able to do their jobs well in a post 9/11 world, but also that increases the risk that these documents can be leaked because now you have more people looking at the documents and the possibility that that could also end up in the hands of foreign intelligence.
In your reporting, did you come across any information that was revelatory for you in terms of understanding, not only what he leaked, but some of his motivations?
Some of these documents were dated to as recently as March. They were considered top secret, some just for American eyes. They showed the delivery timetables of weapons to Ukraine. They showed maps of hotspots. They showed how Ukrainian air defenses had been depleted. There is a document that shows that U.S. forces are operating in Ukraine. The Defense Department is saying that these are not operational in a combative sense. There are documents which show that the Americans have penetrated the Russian military to be able to identify the exact targets and the locations of Russian attacks in Ukraine.
Can you give us an example or can you give us some context in terms of when we've experienced this kind of leak in the past?
Absolutely. I have a counterintelligence source who says that classified documents do end up surfacing on gaming platforms, things like classified tank designs. But in terms of the leakers that we've seen, some of the biggest cases, one that comes to mind is Edward Snowden, a former NSA contractor who back in 2013 shared troves of documents showing that the US was monitoring Americans, civilians. And it also showed some of the tools and techniques that the US uses to spy on other nations. Then, of course, is Chelsea Manning, the former Army intelligence analyst, who shared thousands and thousands of military records and diplomatic cables to do with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and detainees at Guantanamo Bay. Those documents were shared with WikiLeaks. Going back decades ago was Daniel Ellsberg of the Pentagon Papers, who photocopied a report showing U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War in the 70s. What makes those different is that those documents were shared with specific people, specific organizations, and there appears to be ideological underpinnings to those moves. When it comes to Jack Teixeira, this 21-year-old, he comes from a military family. His father retired after 34 years. He retired from this same intelligence wing on a base in Cape Cod. His brother also serving in the military. It does not appear that he did this for any kind of political or ideological reason. It seems that he was doing this for some sort of social mobility, and that really is a completely different breed of leaker that we are now seeing, a very different kind of leaker.
How will this leak affect foreign policy and more broadly the intelligence community?
We could certainly see some problems arise in the short term, but honestly, other countries know that they are being spied on. Everybody is doing it to each other. Another issue at play here could be a hesitation to share intelligence with the United States. I'm told by a former senior intelligence officer that more established relationships, especially with our Five Eye partners, those relationships will continue and will be just fine. But perhaps with countries where the relationship is less mature, there really could be some pause there. And of course, one of the biggest concerns in the US intelligence community right now is that this leak could potentially expose humans on the ground who have been sharing critical information with the US and partners, risking their lives to do so. It could also potentially give the Russians information about some of the technology that the United States is using to gather information. Certainly, the Russians, looking closely at these documents, will be looking for moles and will also do their best to jam the technology that the US is using.
National security correspondent for Scripps News, Sasha Ingber, thank you for joining me and for your insight.
Thanks for having me.